Welcome, everyone, to Coffee and an Interview. I'm Jacqueline Pena, and I'm here today with a special guest, Marie Bornheimer. She is the founder of Mission Inspire Consulting, and I'm excited about a conversation today on leadership. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here.
We're going to dive into this conversation, but I think it's always helpful to know a little bit about our guest so that we can have that framework for this leadership conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself and Mission Inspire Consulting.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So I began my career in the early days doing trauma work at Hopkins. I was a Baltimore City public school teacher, and I moved my way into ed tech, but I've always stayed close to education. And when I found myself stepping away from my corporate life, I realized that I wanted to do work that mattered. I wanted to connect with businesses and founders that saw something in the world that was broken, and they had this unshakable feeling that they had to do something to fix it. And when you meet those people, you know it. They just move differently, they communicate differently. They get up every day with purpose and they're excited to do the work that they're doing. And they don't always have the full staircase visible, but they certainly are willing to just keep working. And they deserve executive level support. They deserve to have community around them and a network that can support them. And so my business is built around creating that trusted partnership for them and allowing them to move their business to the next level in whatever that may be for them. And I get to be that partner in thinking, which is really fun.
That's incredible. You started talking about, mission driven leaders,
Mhm.
purpose driven leaders, and your search for your own passion and doing that work you're passionate about. And purpose driven leaders, mission driven leaders are those who are have understand their passion and are understand their why, right? Their purpose, and have really aligned their lives around that. And like you said, just now need support in the roles that they have. What describe a little bit more. What when you see someone, you say this is a purpose-driven or mission-driven leader. What are those characteristics? What do you see? You shared a little bit. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I often, sometimes it depends on the type of work that they're doing. That is a little bit of a signal, right? I've done a lot of work in mental health and well-being, suicide prevention, taking a look at educational equity, things that they are observing in the world or systems that they have even been a part of that were not set up for them or not in service of their growth and their success. And so people step into those positions often after a lived experience, and decide that they want it to be different for the next person. They want it to be better for the next generation. They want it to be something that they can be proud of. And they find the energy and the passion and the drive to do something.
Mhm.
And it's not about looking outside of yourself and saying somebody should do something. It's about saying, I'm going to do something. And when you meet those people, they just talk differently, they move differently. But oftentimes you can almost recognize them first and foremost by what it is that they are passionate about.
Mhm.
But getting to know them, you feel it. And so I spend a good amount of time, on the front end of the conversation, just simply getting to know people, getting to know their heart, getting to know why they do what they do. And oftentimes, when you do that part, you get to know whether or not you guys would work well together, if they have the discernment and the comfort with allowing you to love their mission and take care of their people the way that they would.
Mhm. Very powerful. Now, we when we are in leadership roles, it's a little tricky, especially when it's our own business. We find this passion, we find this mission, and we want to do something about something. We want to support a group, or there is a cause we want to focus on, or an area like mental health. And a lot of times it's tied to personal experience in some way, or something that inspires you, brings that passion, connects it to your why. But it's lonely. Leadership is lonely,
The
especially in
higher
the
you go, the more
micro.
lonely it gets.
I know. So yeah, so it gets even lonelier. I mean, especially for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who are trying to grow a business. Even if you're not a solopreneur, it's very lonely. It's very difficult in moving forward. So I know you've seen a lot of that. And can you share a little bit about what are some of those challenges our mission driven, purpose driven leaders face day to day?
Well, I would say entrepreneurship and solopreneurship is not for the faint of heart, first and foremost. Getting into it and saying yes to it, being willing to step in and get started is its own feat. And it's something that should be celebrated and acknowledged. I think a lot of times, I was talking to a group the other day about this when I was facilitating a workshop around team dynamics. And what we were talking about is like the self ownership, what I call self leadership. It's how we lead ourselves through the best of it and the worst of it, right? And so entrepreneurs learn the hard way sometimes, and solopreneurs learn the hard way. And one of the reasons really is because we have to admit what we don't know in order to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to teach it to ourselves. We try to resource it ourselves. We try to watch and learn and maybe ask AI now for a partner in thinking, or we go to a networking event, or we listen to a podcast, or we read another book. And what doesn't get done is like we learn so much from the actual experience of going through it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a different playbook, a different arrow in your quiver after having lived through or experienced something. And the same is true for business. The same is true for leadership. Some of the toughest leadership lessons are reflected back to you from the people you lead.
Oh, wow.
And so if you are not a solopreneur and an entrepreneur, but you have a team, or you are, evolving into solopreneurship, but have worked inside of teams to get your experience, right? I had 20 years in corporate before I stepped out on my own. It is in those moments where you believe you are doing the best you can in everything that's right, and someone still reflects back to you that it wasn't right for them. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden you're like, whew, that stings a little bit because I'm tired, right? I'm a little bit burned out. And so I'm a little bit emotional about how that just felt. When what we need to be able to do is take a step back and be like, there can be well meaning people, good intentions, and our impact can still miss the mark
Mm-hmm.
with any human interaction. And leadership amplifies that if you are responsible for not only leading yourself, but leading other people. And so there's going to be those lessons along the way that are going to be reflected by the world, by our customers, by our experiences, and by our people that we're going to have to be willing to take in, sort, sift, reflect, and say, am I going to own that? Or am I going to change that? Or is that just information?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make us good, bad individuals. It simply is an opportunity for us to decide how we respond.
That's very powerful because leadership means you're working with other people, right? Other humans. And communication is always tough because it's not just what you say and how you think you're saying it, it's also what the other person is hearing and how they're interpreting it. And it's all based on our perspective and our lens. But also, when you're a leader, you're just in a small business, a micro business, you're doing everything. You're looking at your operations and you're looking at your client work, and you might even have your own caseload, be doing all the work yourself, depending on how big you are in terms of the client work. And then
Yeah.
you have, the accounting or the bookkeeping and all these other things. It's a lot for a leader. And so they might also not realize the impact and how they're connecting with others. Very interesting that you say that data is that what helps us reflect that information from others.
And we have to be willing to, in that reflection, say, where can I use support?
Mm-hmm.
And when you arrive at the answer to that question, you have to be ready to take the help. A lot of us have a disproportionate balance of giving and receiving. And when we are inside of our own business, we often think that we should be able to manage all of it. Until I get to be this size, I'm going to do all of these things. But is it the most effective and efficient thing for your business? Or are we doing it because we are worried about what happens if we don't? And or if we bring in a person, right? A person to help us? What does it look like? And how do I sustain that? And so sometimes we don't hire because we're worried about that, like, person's income or the salary or the aspect of that element and the sustainability of keeping them and being able to continuously give them work and continuously account for their support.
Mhm.
And I think that's where business is changing. And that's why the introduction of the fractional concept even became a thing, because people were just thinking of everything like a W 2. And then when you go into small business, you need a little bit of help from a lot of different people.
Mhm.
And you may need a bookkeeper, and you may need an operations person, and you may need an IT support person, and you may need somebody who can build, do instructional design, or you may need a virtual assistant. And if you need all of those things, having all of those people full time is maybe more than what your business generated last year.
Mhm.
And so when you think about what you need, and then it's like, oh, that's pie in the sky. And it's like, well, what if each of those people does 5 hours? What if each of those people does a few things? What if one person can do more than one thing? And what does it look like to still be okay with keeping that list of, ideally, in 3 years, I'd like to have all of this support, but this is where I can start, and
Mhm.
making that small investment and then setting your goals accordingly so that you can grow enough to cover that decision.
Oh, for our listeners who own small businesses, or are entrepreneurs or are thinking about it, here is a transition in the conversation. We'll come back to some other things we were talking about, but that transition is now, and how do you sustain your business, and then how do you then keep it growing and keep it growing? And there's only so much you can do if it's a solopreneurship, for example. And I know that as a business owner, I always worry about, man, I really need this help, but what if in a year I can't afford that salary because we don't get enough grant funded projects to pay for
Yep.
that kind of work, right? And so that always makes me nervous, because as a leader, I'm thinking now about the mission and the work we're doing, but I'm also thinking about all the people who work with me. That's
Mhm.
another added pressure for leaders because we
Yeah.
care. So this concept of a fractional employee or fractional team member, I'm going to use the term team member,
Yeah.
is a great one for our listeners to hear if they have any kind of business. And it doesn't matter the size, actually, because sometimes you just need that fractional person for a certain reason. Maybe there's a change in budget, or there's a temporary project coming in, and instead of bringing in that full-timer or that W-2 person, you could really balance it with some fractional team members, people who are fractional team members already doing this work nationally, and say, yes, I would love to work with you, and pick your company as another one to work in as a fractional team member. So that really helps, because if you need something with marketing and it's long term, if you
Mhm.
need an accountant, you don't need an accountant for 40 hours. Maybe you only need an accountant for 4 hours a month.
Yeah.
And then, something that simple, or maybe it's eight. Maybe you just need an operations person that can do HR and operations, a couple other things, for 10 hours a week. So there's so much you can do in terms of fractional work and
Yeah.
bringing in people to support you. So you're not alone, but you are able to sustain the growth, the team member growth. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to think about is you get to, and in my business specifically, I co-create the scope of work with my clients. And what that means is I'm not telling you what you need. You and I are deciding what is most in service of you right now. And we build it in 90-day blocks.
Nice.
There is an expectation on my part, and I hope by the time we get to know each other, your part, which is to say, we're going to take this scope of work and we're going to work on these things for the next 90 days. And at any point in time, if this isn't working for you or for me, like, we're going to open the dialogue, but the contract is going to have a 30-day exit clause. So there's nothing tying anyone long term. But every 90 days, we're going to have a really detailed, specific meeting where we sit down and we evaluate the scope and we build the next scope if, in fact, we mutually agree that we want to continue working together.
Hmm.
People that are in fractional roles are not expecting long-term stability from you alone.
Yeah.
What they are creating is long-term stability for themselves with flexibility to get to their value exchange without any one business having to carry the load.
Mm-hmm.
And so a fractional CFO, chief financial officer, or a chief marketing officer could be working across a couple businesses. And so they're going to get to their own comfort salary level, but it's never going to be carried by any one person or any one business. And so
Mm-hmm.
you'll have their dedicated attention and time when you have them, but you're also not carrying the weight of being responsible for them solely. And
Mm-hmm.
so that does give you a little bit of breathing room. And those individuals have a ton of experience. So they hit the ground running. Unlike a traditional hire that may be more junior, that needs a long ramp up period. And small businesses can't afford a long ramp up period. You need speed, you need effectiveness, and you need
Mm-hmm.
outcomes. And so getting someone in the door that has that experience is of great value. I partnered with an organization when I moved to Miami last year that actually matches startups and small businesses with fractional talent and board advisor talent. And the
Right.
businesses can actually register for free. And what they receive in return is what they call a pro bono placement, which is someone that will work on your business for 6 months at no cost to you. And then if you want to bridge that into a longer term relationship, you can choose to do that. And that gives people a running start that maybe can invest in those roles. And the talent, the person that does the board advisory work or the fractional work, they're getting experience and reps at doing the work. So you may be getting someone who's building their portfolio, but frankly, to get the exchange, and they have experience, it's not like they're not coming to the table with experience. They're just making a pivot to build a portfolio business for themselves. And in turn, they have to work inside of some companies. Why not let that be your company? And so when I partnered with them, I got excited about the opportunity and the pathway it creates for those that may not be able to take on a retainer or pay someone like myself just yet. But it doesn't mean that they don't deserve support. And perhaps it's the bridge they need to being able to make the next investment.
Yeah. And it's very aligned to the mission of your work with Mission
Mhm.
Inspire Consulting. So that makes perfect sense in that kind of work. But you're right. I mean, thank you for sharing that opportunity with our listeners. Um, but
I'll
you
make sure that you have the link for everyone when I provide my own links, and I'll make sure that you guys have those referral links. Like I said, it's free for the businesses. It's certainly worth taking a look at.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Thank you. And the links, all these resources are in the description of this podcast episode. And I'll remind you all at the end of the episode, but definitely very, very important. The other thing is, people think, when they're thinking about fractional team members, they might be thinking like a contractor, like, oh, I already tried this. I brought someone on board to do this work for me for a month on a W-9. We agreed on this much work, and it didn't work out. And so, he or she or that company or that organization didn't understand the needs, and I'm still in the same place or whatever it is. And I think it's very important to differentiate one-time project contractors versus a fractional role, because this person, I mean, you heard this example of how Don works at Mission Inspire Consulting. This person is integrated in your organization, is a team member. That's why I'm using that phrase, becomes a team member, and really gets to know the organization and work with you as part of that organization. And that's the difference with a fractional team member. And I loved the approach. You're doing it in quarters, 90-day blocks, 13-week blocks, right? Because they're short term. You get some clear deliverables, you establish those together, you meet those, you decide, okay, what do we need next for the next 90 blocks? And you're always moving forward together. So now a leader is growing as a leader and growing the business and doing it with support, not alone.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the distinction between the fractionals and maybe these one-time projects. The other thing that I think is worth noting in as an embedded team member, essentially, which is what I do, I kind of I want to be in the rooms. I want to
Mhm.
be in the spaces, because if you do have multiple team members, It's not enough to just get an update from somebody. It's really interesting to watch the dynamics between the humans in addition
Yeah.
to the actual work. Um, and one of the other things is that when I first started working for myself, I had an offering in my portfolio for executive coaching, and people would want to hire me to coach them. And what I found with these founders and small business owners, and even these executives from bigger companies, they had this lovely conversation with me for an hour. And then they went back into the grind for the rest of the week. And they were on fire for a little while, and then everything gets interrupted. And they would come back the next week and they would say, I know we said we were going to do these things, and I didn't get to them. And now we're trying to mitigate the feelings you've been carrying for not getting to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quickly pivoted to say, what does it look like for me to come inside of your organization? And I can have one on ones with anybody and coach you inside your business in real time, and also help you chip away at that never ending to do list because I can actually skillfully do the work too. And I think when you can see that and have that partner to come inside the business and help you, you sleep a little bit better. You might actually let yourself have an out of office reply. You might actually go on a vacation one day. And all of the idea that that's all possible just lets you breathe. And you deserve that. And so I realized I love coaching. I don't mind doing it, but I'm far more effective. I actually come inside your business and do it in real time instead
Mm-hmm.
of you carving out separate time to sit and tell me about your week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just more effective and efficient for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, as you're talking, I feel like I'm in a leadership therapy session. So thank you, because I'm thinking about my own consulting firm and challenges, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's right. Oh yes. So yeah, thank you for the therapy session.
You're welcome.
But on that note, let's talk about needs, right? Because and I say you because of your experience and the work you do, and thank you for bringing that to the table. You go in as a fractional team member, you have your 90 days, then there's another 90 days. And a lot of times for us leaders, we don't realize what we need, right? We don't know what that feedback is from other team members. We don't fully grasp everything from our clients, how they're truly feeling, or anything that we can bring to the table to enhance the business. We don't always understand the gaps. So we need a gap analysis in our overall operations. We might not really see it all or try to understand, or be able to understand all the pieces. And a lot of times for us, we have great ideas, services, products, and a great growing business, but we don't have the systems. We think hiring people is the solution, but what we don't have are the systems that make sense to run the organization so that people can come and be part of the organization with these systems.
Correct.
So, how do we get there? How do we help leaders? And we could put, I could be in the hot seat, and for all our listeners, think about yourselves as leaders in your different roles, or organizations. How do we figure out what we need, and then be able to work with a fractional team member or with our current team as is?
I often say sometimes when you're so close to it, it's hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so sometimes just having an outside perspective and have somebody observe and reflect back to you what they're seeing. There are times where you've hired some of the most amazing humans, and we don't always set them up for success. And then we wonder why they're not getting to the goals that we set for them, or they're struggling in a way that we weren't anticipating. And it's back to that structure and system process that you're talking about. So some people can come into what I call the messy middle. They can come into the messy and they can help shape it, clean it up, operationally very sound, and they will just build it. If it doesn't exist, they're going to build it. The number of corporate companies I went to work with earlier in my career where I was the one who built the onboarding guide for myself and then handed it over to the leadership so they can use it with other people next time. I mean, more often than not, because I was building it so I could teach it to myself. And then in turn, I was like, well, this shouldn't happen to anybody else. So I would just build it and hand it over. And it earned a lot of credibility for me early in my career because I was a doer, right? I was just someone who would get in there and do. But when someone gets hired for the vision and then they get behind the curtain and they see the messy, not everyone thrives in that space. And so, a lot of times, what we need to do is to actively look at what you have accomplished so far, what is already in place that's working, and then where do we need efficiencies so we can get to the most human parts of the business, which is
Mm.
the customer conversations, the thoughtful prospecting calls, the if you're delivering, right? If you're delivering webinars and sessions and in person interactions, you can't do as a founder and as a leader, you cannot get to the majority of your day being spent on income producing activity and human focused interactions if you are operationally building spreadsheets and bookkeeping and cleaning up after XYZ. And everybody has a different type of business, so I'm going to try to be as general as I can. But there is a time where you have to do some of those things, and that's okay. But
Mhm.
every minute you spend doing those things, you're not doing something else. And whether that's going to your child's soccer practice or it's not talking to a next customer, a
Mhm.
lot of us don't work a 40-hour work week because we are trying to find the time to do the other things. So, what I would suggest, and I encourage everyone that I meet to do, is to set a goal by when you will not do that anymore and work towards the opportunity and the chance to plug in the person who can do that more easily, effectively, and efficiently for you while you do all of the other things that are more meaningful to you and will move the needle on your business. And so that's like having a virtual assistant. It actually becomes a job for you if you don't know how to use them well.
Mhm. Exactly.
The number of people who don't hire a VA because they don't know how to use them effectively, or they feel like it's another job putting together their to-do list. It's about finding the right person at the right time and then trusting them to do the thing. And a lot
Trust.
of us are holding it all together because we don't want anything to break. But sometimes we have to be willing to build the relationship and rapport to say, you know what? I can't hire you to do this right now, but I love what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me. I'm going to set a goal for myself and I'm going to circle back and just start keeping track of those people that you think, okay, I'm going to plug somebody in. By mid year, I'm going to plug somebody in to do my bookkeeping. I'm just going to ask them to, I'm going to use QuickBooks and I'm going to ask them to reconcile at the end of the month and meet with me for 2 hours, whatever it is. What is the smallest amount of an investment for the efficiency that can get that done and done well to make sure you're compliant? So you can spend the other time and energy knowing that's going to get taken care of. There is something to say for having that peace of mind.
Mhm.
It's like having a tax accountant that you like, know, like, and trust, right? Having that good tax person, you're like, oh, thank God. Because when you're panicked, you just call them.
Mhm.
Whoever that can be for you in whatever space inside of your business, sometimes we just need that person to be like, I got it. I'll get you a summary by the end of the week, or I'll check in with you on Monday, or whatever that is. But if you can't hire the person today, set a goal for what is the thing that you would like to stop doing inside of your business so you can do more of the other things, and then work towards that goal so you can get that person in the seat that you need when you need it, so that you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel
Mhm.
from doing all the things. Because you're
Yeah.
going to limit your growth. At some point, you're going to limit your business's capacity to grow and scale if you continue to hold on to everything.
Yeah. And how much your business can grow, you're going to limit it because it's based on how much time you can give, how many
Yeah.
hours you can help with clients, work with clients. But what happens if you, as an owner slash leader, if one day you are sick
Yeah.
or a family member and you move into a caregiver role, everything shifts. And so now you have no playbook for each of the different things you do in your organization for someone else to be able to follow it, no SOPs, as
Yeah.
another term. And you don't have anyone else that can support the business and you. And so if it relies solely on you and you do have team members reporting to you, everything could collapse the moment you're not able to dedicate enough time to the organization, and then they can no longer be team members because you don't have the clients and the revenue to support them. So it's a scary example, but it happens.
No, I met a woman I interviewed on my podcast that actually ended up with a pretty scary cancer diagnosis as a leader. And she realized at that moment that when she got to the other side, that's who she was going to step in and coach and help, because she realized that she at that moment learned a lot about leading and about navigating an uncertain moment in time. And if you build the infrastructure, if your people are not waiting to be told what to do, but they have the playbook or the SOPs, scope, and they know what to do, when you step away for something small or something emergent, everything can keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a need to know that that is possible. And maybe it's not in your first year of a business, but build it as you go, or hire someone on a fractional team member or someone that can help you build it. And there's a lot of brilliant tools out there right now at a very low cost you can start building. And it's about recognizing what documentation would be required for you to hire the next right person and give them that onboarding deck, or what does it look like to be able to trust somebody to take that next prospecting call and have the resources and this, even the slide deck to use. Like, what does it look like to know that you have those pieces created and in place so somebody can be trained on them and somebody can pick them up and take them and keep the business moving at a time where you have to step away or choose to step away, because guess what? You deserve to take a break. You deserve to
Mm-hmm.
go on vacation. And so if you don't feel like you can see how that's possible right now, then start building towards it and figuring out how you can do that. Even if it's like taking a half day, start small, go out to lunch,
Yeah.
don't eat at your desk.
Yeah. Treat yourself to lunch, ideally
Yes,
outside if it's warm
thing.
enough. But yeah. Yeah, I think that self-care becomes very important. And um, part of it is also carving out the time to think about your business, to be able to then bring someone on board to help you in getting that business to the next level, getting your SOPs or your playbook, or filling in a fractional role like the accounting piece. Someone can come in and do that gap analysis, do that leadership analysis, see where you need to build systems, and actually build those systems, build those playbooks and SOPs.
But you know what's interesting that you mention the gap analysis and having someone evaluate? You can contract for just that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can start with just saying, I need someone to look at these three things inside my business. I know a woman who just analyzes websites, right?
Nice.
You hire them to do the one thing and you say, okay, then we're going to schedule this meeting for you to present this back to us. And then we would ask that that you include some recommendations. The best of us, meaning fractionals, will give you choice. They're not going to be like, you hire me to do this or you're done. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
show you how to do it done with you, done for you, or some version of that, right? They're going to make sure that you have some accessible options to choose from. And if they did enough listening and they're doing the right analysis of your business, they're also going to know kind of where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so trust that if you have the right person come into your experience, they're going to be there to offer you clarity, options, and transparency about where to go from here. And they may say to you, and you can take all of the recommendations and say, you know what, thank you so much for this information. This investment was worthwhile. And then you can decide what you do next. They give you information, you make decisions.
I love that.
No one's taking your power away. So put the contract together, let them put the contract together in a way that's in service of you feeling like you can decide at every step of the way what you want to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if you say, this is great, this is very helpful. We're going to take this internally for a little bit longer, but we're just immensely grateful for what you put together here. It got us pointed in the right direction. Thank you for validating that we're already in the right direction, or thank you for course correcting. And then you go from there. I've
Mm-hmm.
done those gap analyses for people, and they have decided to either turn completely in another direction to a different vertical and try a different ideal client profile. And that's okay. But the clarity allows you to then make decisions. And so sometimes that's the first project. It's
Mm-hmm.
letting somebody just like peek behind the curtain and under the hood.
I love that analogy. Yeah, and I think the key to that is the conversation with that person, a clear contract, being on the same page about the deliverables and the timeline. You can have that person draft something and then have a conversation and make sure it's aligned to what you need and that you feel comfortable with what's there. And it might be a little bit of back and forth, but negotiating that as your first major big step here for this kind of work. And then bringing that person on board to help you to look under the hood or behind the curtain.
Yes, and I will just say, because I find this, I gave this advice yesterday, and I find this more often than not. Do not feel bad about asking someone like me to sign an NDA
Love
before you
that.
let them peek behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
There is no reason in this world they should not be willing to sign an NDA. I will tell you, putting forward a mutual NDA makes a little bit more paperwork for people. You need a standard NDA, just simply that protects you and your business before you show them. Because guess what? There's going to be something that you're like, oh, I really want to show them that, but it's going to cause hesitation. The NDA covers you, clears you, keeps you safe. Then you can be honest and show them everything they need to see. So
Great advice.
put the NDA in place. Don't feel bad about asking for them to sign it before you send them over any other assets to review. And then in reference to the contract, you'll hear if I ever talk about scope of work, I will always say co-create scope of work. And that's because it's meant to be a dialogue, not a monologue. Just because I come to the table with expertise, I am not the expert on your business. You are.
Yep.
I am not the person who knows what you need. I can illuminate and reflect back to you what I see. And I can tell you what worked for other people. But at the end of the day, you're going to need to be fully vested in what I'm about to do. So if I build that list of activities and bullets for that scope of work all on my own, the risk is that you're going to say, oh, well, she's the consultant. She knows. She's the fractional. She knows. And then you're going to be like, every day, you're going to be like, but is that what we need to be doing? Don't do that to yourself. Co-create the scope of work. Make sure everyone is clear. Everyone agrees. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone understands what order we're going in. Everyone knows where we're starting. And then you can feel good about what's about to happen and look forward to the clarity you're going to gain from it, or the support, or whatever it is that you guys agreed is the next right thing.
Mm.
And the person that's not willing to do that with you is not your person. It's not who you're meant to work with, and that's okay. But don't fight for it, right? Don't fight to get along in that stage. Like, it should feel supportive and ease. It should feel like you're going to catch a breath soon. And if the person doesn't make you feel that way when you meet with them, they're just not your person. And that's okay.
I'm so glad you brought that up because we might see these folks as experts doesn't mean we have to work with them. It is a relationship. You have to build that and it has to feel right. And I myself have fallen into that space where, something's off, I'm not sure, and I still jump into something with someone, with a contractor for a one-time project. And then I say I should have listened to my intuition because I noticed this. I was getting a lot of budging here. This person was trying to bring only this and not hear who we are. And so you start to see those things in those early conversations before there's an agreement or a contract. And if it doesn't seem like a good fit, if something seems off, it's okay. You don't have to work with that person. But then that brings me to my next question. We've talked so much about all these amazing things we could do with fractional team members and one-time contractors too for projects. How do we find how do we find these humans, these individuals, these experts to work with us? How do we find people out there? Sometimes we don't even know where to look and we don't want to just go online and search fractional accountant,
No,
fractional. Yeah. So
no,
what do we
I would
do?
not do that. I would not. There are a lot of people that hang up a shingle. I would not do that. I have built my whole career on relationships. So my answer is going to be very relational. Um,
Mhm.
I have I'm a military spouse, so I move around quite a bit. And so I have to be very intentional with building a global network. But I also need to be very intentional, like with how I show up in the communities that I call home for a little while. And so what I do is I build relationships and connections locally. I join local networking and conversations. And then I also keep a thriving global network going. When you meet someone like me, I am always going to be a person who's going to help you find somebody that I trust, that I would only point you in the direction of if I believe they will take good care of you. So you don't need to know everybody. You need to know a few good somebodies.
Mhm.
There's a woman I met when I first got here to Miami that is very well connected in the nonprofit community. She's a lovely human. And I have met so many people through her because she's just such a giving spirit and invites people in. And one of the things that I realized when I first got here is that people are a little bit hesitant to trust until they got to know you. But when they knew I knew Janet, it was like a fast pass to the front of the line. It was great. And it was just to serve. I was actually just asking to serve. I wasn't even looking to monetize anything. I was simply here to offer my time and my expertise and add value. But when I met a person that they already trusted, it mattered.
Mhm.
And so as you're looking around and figuring out who those people are for you, I would say try on, if you will, a few different networking groups to see if, in fact, you can find some of those good people. Because your social capital, your community, your network, your connections are going to be of great reciprocity for you. Um, and it's about whether or not you can find an opportunity for the both giving and receiving. If I can make an introduction for anyone, I'm more than happy to do it. And if I don't know who, I'm going to find a person who knows a person. And I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time with them first to make sure I like them. That matters to me. I'm never going to just point somebody towards you and be like, I hope they're great. Like, because I treat it like it's my own business. And not everyone's going to go that extra mile, but the people that will are going to be people that are really the ones you want to surround yourself with. If you are an introvert, if you are someone who is terrified of the idea of networking and connecting and going into a space where you don't know anybody, find someone to go with.
Mm.
Or you can do virtual coffees.
Yes.
Virtual coffees give you about 20 to 25 minutes to meet a person, and it gives you an opportunity to also like be in a safe space that feels good for you. So not everybody can just roll into a room of 100 people and just start talking to them. So find the community that feels a little bit more intentional and a little smaller, or start with those virtual coffees and then move to a coffee shop if you can do it in person. There
Mhm.
is an organization here in Miami that I've grown to like so far. They're growing, but they're called the Miami Business Council, and they
Mm.
meet in the design district. And they have a really beautiful offering where they're doing these free networking breakfasts, if you will. And it's once a month. And when you go, right now it's free. If you want to contribute to what they're building, they have a small, what they call discovery option where it's like $100 for 3 months to just contribute to the growth of what they're building. They bring a speaker in and everyone comes in and just chats, but smaller, and everyone's local business owners. And whether or not you see yourself in everyone that's there or not, it's like getting yourself out there. It's getting the reps in of like sharing who you are and what you do. I joined a online group for prosperity to remove prosperity blocks. And it was facilitated by a woman who does business healing here in the area. And I met her through an organization called Miami Made. She may be one of the most beautiful humans I had the benefit of meeting through that organization. So sometimes I just say yes to opportunities. And if I just meet one good person, I met a lot of good people from that. But if I just meet one good person, I feel like my time was well spent. And then you need to be intentional with nurturing those relationships. And so all of that to say, you need to take one step in the right direction of connecting with individuals who then you can share what you need and allow them to give you introductions or connections that can help you find some of the right people that you're looking for. So, if you need a virtual assistant, who do you know that already has one that they love? Right?
Mhm.
If you need a bookkeeper, who has one that they already like and how are they working with them and what does that look like for you? Create the space to interview people loosely to just say, "Hey, I heard you were a fantastic VA. I'd love to jump on a virtual coffee and like learn about how you support your clients and how that works." They'll send you their pricing sheet after or whatever that is, and you're under no obligation to greenlight that and say yes to them. But maybe if you have two or three of those, you can be like, "Oh, I met these three people and this person and I vibed way better. I think our communication styles are going to be better."
Mhm.
And the time you take on the front end will be worth everything on the back end. What you said earlier about listening to your intuition,
Yeah.
one of the best things you can know about your intuition is it doesn't need you to decide why. It needs you to pay attention. If you get that gut check that's like, something's off, just trust that that's true. The why will reveal itself later. But don't go down a rabbit hole and start talking yourself in and out of stuff, because that's how you learn the lesson on the other side. And you don't want to learn it after you made the investment. So just trust that for whatever reason it doesn't feel 100% aligned and connect with a few other people and really check in with yourself. It's okay to circle back. It's okay to create space because you're making an investment and you want to feel really good about it and excited about it.
Mm. See? Leadership therapy. Thank you. But but yes, you shared so many great nuggets of information, so many advice, and now this advice on networking to help you learn and connect and see other opportunities and see where you can find fractional consultants or team members, I should say, or contractors for one-time projects. I think networking becomes very important because you want to vet people and learn and see what's out there. So thank you for sharing that. We've learned so much from you. And my final question is there anything else you want to share with us? Any final thoughts, words of advice, or something that you want to share that I haven't asked you about yet?
I think the most important thing for your audience to know is they are not alone in whatever it is they're creating and building. And so you have to allow yourself to have support. And your support doesn't have to look the same as other people's. But don't feel like you have to go at it alone because you don't. And it
Mm,
doesn't mean you pay everybody. It doesn't mean it's either I'm alone or I have to pay people. There's a lot of spaces in between where networking can start to fill a gap where you can learn. Podcasting can fill a gap where you can learn. Getting in spaces where people are talking about these things, where you're in small business groups. I belong to a networking group that's a B2B focused networking group. Like, figure out where you want to be and the rooms you want to be in so that you understand and know you're not alone. And when you figure out what you need, you have a safe space to land to ask for what you need. And you're going to be far more successful when you allow yourself to have the support.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for being part of Coffee and an Interview and sharing all these nuggets, all these gems of advice and strategy with us. For our listeners, you're going to see more about Dawn and Mission Inspire Consulting in the description for this episode, but also the links to all the wonderful resources that we talked about here. Those will also be in the description for you so that you can just go there, copy, paste, and put in your browser or click depending on where you're listening. But with that, Don, thank you so much for being with us. I learned a lot. I am not lying when I say that this was leadership small business therapy. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for listening. And if anybody wants to connect with me directly, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and we can find time for that virtual coffee I talked about. And if you want any more information about any of the things that I rattled off, even just some guidance or some thoughts, I'm happy to do that. I do come from a place of service. That is my intention and focus. And so helping people along the way is why I'm here. So there's no strange question. Feel free to just fire away, and we'll see where it takes us.
I love that. Free virtual coffee time, more networking, more connection. Thank you so much again, Dawn. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you walked away with some gems yourselves. I have a very long list of gems to take back. So have a wonderful day, everyone, and keep listening to Coffee and an Interview.